Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Visions of Voices. I am your host, John Stewart, partner here at Armanino, head of the family office industry. With me today is a friend and a great colleague, Jeff. Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself. Tell people about who you are and what you do in the space.
Yeah, so a little bit of a story. I will try to not make it annoyingly long, but it goes back to my dad going from high school to the Army, learning the trade of printing. In the Korean War, he was in Germany learning printing, came back to the States, blue collar craftsman type of guy.
Sure.
Hated working for other people, lithography, like high end art prints and advertising quality sort of prints. And he basically took the little savings he and my mom had and a home equity line and risked a lot and started his own business. It took off, which really was tough for him because he never led a company. He was more of a blue collar craftsman.
Right.
He was out of his mind with stress. I was going in really in middle school and then high school and college, just trying to help him keep up, not even asking for any kind of payment.
You're just helping out on the side, huh? Just helping
out. But would you like to take a guess, John, who he took his stress out on?
Oh, man. You?
Good guess, John.
Oh, no.
Totally uncoached. Good guess. And it was rough. And, I understood he was stressed out because this was a whole new thing for him, but it was not a good feeling to try to help him and the family out and be getting all this stuff. So my mom, in her wisdom, saw what was happening, found a psychologist. And this is like 40 years ago before there was much of this, a psychologist.
Yeah, much before this was more mainstream like it is now. Right.
Yeah. And she insisted the whole family come, even my mom and sisters who weren't in the business. And I learned a lot from that single decision, like bringing the whole family and not just the people involved in the business. It got super deep into my dad's childhood and his father escaped the Nazis, lost the rest of his family, and was like an orphan young man in America. And that's who my dad was raised by. And long story short,
that's a lot of trauma to go through. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, my dad and his father, and there are more details, but suffice it to say, it was transformative, the experience. It helped me and my sisters understand our family history and my dad's behavior in a whole different way, brought us closer. I decided, hey, let's just be father and son. I don't even like this printing stuff. I'm just here to help you out. I'm graduating college. I want to go into the business world, fully supported by my mom and dad. I went into sales and marketing in the corporate world, had a really good run at a young age, just felt totally unfulfilled. And I said, hey, I'm walking away. Mom, Dad, can I move back in my late 20s, be roommates with you guys and go to grad school? And I studied family dynamics, got trained as a family therapist. I did 7 years postgraduate school in a psychoanalytic institute, got certified as a psychoanalyst, and 30-something years ago, I started a private practice doing talk therapy, and I really thought that was the landing spot.
Yeah, sure.
Totally by coincidence, a couple of my earliest clients had significant wealth, and I was doing therapist stuff with them, but I got to know them really deeply, and I said, man, there's a whole other level of complexity. Every family has complexity, but when there's business and wealth and generational wealth, there's a lot on the shoulders of the parents and the wealth creators. And I saw that there was something there that therapists weren't trained to do, and lawyers, accountants, wealth managers didn't have all the psychological family.
Yeah, they wouldn't be equipped to help with that arena. Right. Yeah.
And I said, let me move into this space, not as a therapist, but coach, facilitator, educator. And over 30 years, built it to where really now I'm working with family ownership, families who own stuff, significant amounts of stuff together, helping them get from one generation to the next, working together. Some of it is beautiful and proactive where things are going well and they want to keep it that way. And I love those. Some of those, there's pain and they need to sort of help with it. And some of them, the pain is so deep and heavy that sometimes it's too far gone. But most of the referrals I get fall into the healthy, proactive, keep it that way, or not horribly off.
Not horribly. We can get through this. I mean, what's inspiring about that, Jeff, is you took a pretty painful moment. By the way, thank you for being transparent and sharing such a thing. Not everybody would do that, but it also shows the man you are and what you built, because you took a painful moment and you turned it into a passion and a life and something beautiful that you're sharing with others to help them. And I mean, that you need to be commended for that, Jeff. That's really inspiring.
Thanks, man. That's nice. Yeah, no, it was tough, and it came together by accident. I just did a lot of different things that seemed right, and then all of a sudden I was like, hey, here's something new. Maybe I can do. Maybe this is a thing.
So how did you evolve that as you went? So you said, yeah, I just started as talk therapy. and you started sitting with these different families. How did you start to evolve your approach with families? Like what were the beginnings of that? Like when you started to realize, wait, this is a bigger thing now.
Yeah.
Nobody else is equipped to do it. I think I've got the skills to help. How did you evolve like your methodologies and your approach to this?
That's a really good question. Mentors have been amazing and ranging from people who, so when I was sort of figuring this out, it was the beginning of this kind of, this whole profession kind of formulating itself. And
Yeah,
there
of
were
course. Yeah,
people,
this you had to be at the beginning of the forefront of this because this was not something people often did back then. So
yeah,
yeah.
but there were a few people, maybe 10 to 15 years older than me, who had started to do it. And I found some of them and they took me under their wing and talked about what they were doing. Freda Hers Brown is really well known in my field. She started a company called Relative Solutions, but she was a family therapist in Highland Park, New Jersey, where I started my practice. She went to Westchester, New York, and started a family therapy training center. So she was really a family therapist, but she had so many wealthy families in Westchester that and she didn't understand the business finance side of it. So
Right,
she
because that's the other
together,
piece that, and you would know that, right? You were more familiar because that's the piece that a normal therapist needs to be. I would think that's one of the gaps. Are there other gaps? But like that feels like one of the skills. Like, hey, that's what makes you different than a normal therapist is that you understand the financial dynamics too.
to some degree, as well as having been in the business world, in family business and sort of corporate non-family business. So a lot of different angles on it. Freda Hurst Brown got together with Dick Beckhart at the MIT Sloan School of Business. He was a management guru with no family dynamics training. She was a family dynamics expert with no business financial. And that model and starting a
Oh,
study, they started a study group with other professions, accountants, attorneys who are also struggling with their piece of the puzzle and how it fit in. That actually became the Family Firm Institute. Little groups like that became the Family Firm Institute, which is now really an internationally leading organization for consultants, researchers, educators in this field. So getting in with her, hearing what she was doing, that's one way that I evolved my practice. Other mentors from various
sure.
professions, education, and sort of just reading books about trusts and finance. And so I'm not a trust and estate attorney by any means. I'm not
Right.
a tax accountant, but enough to be able to integrate the different pieces with the
But you didn't
family
know enough to know the
dynamics into a whole.
nuances to speak to them, right? Because if this is your clients' lives, you need to understand how their
Yeah,
lives function, right? That
yeah,
makes
yeah, yeah.
that's that. I mean, honestly, this whole story is inspiring, which is really the motivation for why I wanted to do this with you today. Because you've told me some of this before, right? So
Mhm.
this is not all new to me, but I know it's new
Yeah.
to the audience.
Thanks for pretending it's new and fresh.
Yeah, I will, of course. Yeah. What? So, no, so now let's get into some stuff we haven't talked about before. So I'd love to hear, like, what are some of the most common challenges you see with business families or legacy wealth families across generations? I mean, there's a lot written about, but you're in the weeds of this, man. What do you really see when what comes up the most?
Yeah. It basically comes down to wealth creators know what it's like to create wealth. Kids who grow up in it don't necessarily have it. Some wealth creators know how to integrate that in, even at the highest levels of wealth, and even just sort of moderate high net worth, up
Right.
all the way up to super high net worth. Some of these folks understand that they need to give their kids an experience that the kids didn't have, and they can easily miss. Others miss it completely and just assume, hey, I figured it out, they'll figure it out. But growing up and creating wealth, especially if you came from poverty or more of a blue collar
Right.
middle class, even upper middle class in the sort of lower end of it's very different going from that to serious wealth and creating it than growing up in it. So that's one real sort of significant answer to that question is the more the parents and the wealth creators and the grandparents can have a culture in the family of developing the subsequent generations and giving them challenging experiences, the better it is. Because when you think this is just the way it is and you don't understand the work that goes into it, that's where a lot of problems come from.
Yeah, I would say so. Those are kind of the green flags you probably look for, right? Hey, do they have this type of program set up? Are they actively educating and having the children of the next generation engage in new ways to understand what this means, right? So I
And challenge them, not just talking, not just
right.
reading,
You got to actually put them in.
real
You got to
challenge.
challenge them to do something with it, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I can tell. I mean, this is what the statistics say, right? That the curse of the third generation. These things die by third handoff, right? By Gen 3. So, do you see
So
that?
that
Do you think that's true, or do you dispute? Like, what do you see in your experiences?
That's tricky right now. There's a guy in this field, Jim Grubman. He's written a lot of stuff and some pretty interesting stuff. And he took a look at that research. And while it's not clear how to measure, how long families go, one
Right.
thing for sure is that a couple of the most popular pieces of research that are often quoted, 70% don't make it to the second generation,
Yeah,
and then
there's all those percentages. You wonder, is that? I mean, I don't know how you measure that either. I get it. I get.
well, but one of the problems is that research doesn't take into account families who went from poverty to a $300 million in revenues business and sell it. That's included in the failed, do not exist anymore statistic.
Oh, interesting.
And
That's an interesting way to define fail, huh? Yeah.
well, so that people, the researchers didn't use the term fail, but all the folks in my field that are trying to scare families into hiring them change the research to the word
Uh,
fail. The truth is they just said simply do not exist, the researchers. But that includes people who grew something from nothing and sold it. So you can see where it starts to get tricky.
right.
It was also Roy Williams, who, rest in peace. He was sort of a pretty well-known guy that wrote some books and did a lot of work in this field. He also found a 70% failure rate, but again, he had a very small sample.
Yeah.
It's really hard to know. But anecdotally, when I talk to colleagues, right? So right now it's a hot issue in the field talking about this third generation failure.
Yeah, because it's coming up more and more. Because obviously we're seeing a lot of wealth transfer, and we will probably for the next decade or so, right? So,
Yeah.
with the boomers retiring, so yeah, I can see why everybody's going to talk about it because you want to help companies or sorry families avoid such a thing if really is that big of a pitfall.
Right. And we were trying to figure out if it is true. But kind of anecdotally, I see it all the time. And I think part of the reason for the third generation failure when it does happen is you've got the wealth creator, that their children tend to see the wealth creator because they're in the same family. They see the move from, poverty or even middle class to
Right.
upper middle class to whatever. And they see it happening. The grandkids just kind of grow up in it and it's not built
Yeah,
in.
it's different there. Like, yeah, I've always understood how G2 could still be in it, right? Like you said, they witness it. That grit can be transferred in some cases, right? The kids can get the grit from the parents and say, okay, I can do this too. I want to do this too. But yeah, it's the next one that has no way to see it unless, like, I guess, what are the red flags that you look for in there? Like, how do you know when you meet a family, what are those red flags of dysfunction that you see that you're like, uh-oh, we may have a bigger problem, or no, okay, if these ones don't show up, we're probably pretty good. They still may need some help and education, but they're probably on a good path. Like, what are those red flags you see that immediately are like, okay, we're gonna have to dive in?
Yeah, I mean, one of the red versus green flags I look for is the children of the wealth creator and the grandchildren, if there are grandchildren, or depending how many generations, what kind of challenges have they had in terms of, education, in terms of work history, in and out of the family enterprise, if there is one, how much were they challenged versus how much were things sort of handed to them and there was not much expected in return. That's really a big one. And then are there strong family values? And does everyone sort of have a sense of what the family values are? And do they really live by them? Are there stories, really positive stories that
Right.
go across generations, not just about wealth creation, but also just the history of the family, what our family went through? I can tell the family business story of my family. I can also tell the story of survival of my grandfather and our family getting decimated and all. Then there's really great research on the power of children knowing the family story and how it correlates with all this wonderful mental health stuff. Some really interesting creative research showing that the more kids know about their family history, the better they function, the more grit, resilience, and
It's pretty
less mental
cool. I
health
mean, I
issues.
that really applies to any family, I would assume. It doesn't really matter
Absolutely.
upper net worth
Absolutely.
or not.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah,
not
that's a
wealth
great
created.
insight. Yeah, like the more they know, the more they're bought into it and want to carry it on
Yeah.
and do good by the name, right? So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. That's good insight. So that's great. Like, so so how does communication play a role here, right? Because I feel like a lot of this is relational dynamics. It sounds like, right? And so, do you see communication being key to this? Is this as simple as, and I'm going to guess you're going to tell me no, so I'm teeing you up. But is it just as simple as G1's just not communicating well enough to G2?
I mean, that's probably overly simplistic, but every family has a style, right? Again, it from poor to middle class, all the way up to the highest levels. Every family, regardless of money, has some kind of a style.
Sure.
Family is challenging, regardless of money. But when you
Right.
put it all together, and families, subsequent generations are going to be heavily affected by this. That's where the communication becomes just as important as the sort of working class families, but it's even more important because their lives are going to be affected so much. The working class person, there's no safety net coming their way, and the control that comes with it as well. They're going to
Right.
go off and make their choices and do what they're going to do in the world. But then when there's a trust coming your way, it's this sort of special gift that has expectations with it, right? A trust is a special gift. It's not just an ATM. It's a gift
It is a
with
special gift. Yeah.
expectations, and so that's where communication is magnified, whether it's healthy or unhealthy. How do you talk to kids about a trust? How do you talk to them about what's coming up in their future? Do you keep it a secret and then they find out and they're totally blown away because they don't know how it works, who the professionals are, what the ground rules are? Maybe the grantor is dead and we thought we were going to keep it a secret, which was not unusual 30, 40 years ago. Now there's much more of a move toward transparency. And so the
Right.
communication is the opportunity to teach and to develop and to
How
prepare.
early do you see that starting? Like, is that a teenager type thing? Is it in their 20s? Like, where do you recommend that early start? And maybe it's you're drip feeding some of this. I know you're not going to share everything. They can only handle so much at a certain age. But when do you recommend they start that?
So I am really passionate about this and that question. And I say it starts with couples before they have kids in the first 5 years of life. And you're not talking about money with the kids who are under 5 years old. But if you can get couples, and I do this kind of coaching with couples when there's significant family wealth before they have kids, to start to talk about money and meaning and materialism and values and purpose and what makes a good life and how are you as a couple similar? How are you different? And how are you going to handle those similarities and differences as you think about kids who are not even yet born, but are
Right.
hopefully to be here in a few years? And then there's some really creative stuff that I do with families with 1, 2, and 3 year olds that
Really?
really, it has nothing to do with money. It all has to do with what are the ways that you instill deeply held values of the parents in those kids. And it has to do with having 1 and 2 year olds put napkins, at each plate at dinner,
Right.
cleaning up the
Responsibility,
napkins.
ownership.
If you want to
Or
teach them that work is part of life, well, then have them work. And the truth is, at those young ages, none of this is like turning your kids into a robot. 1 and 2 year olds love to do adult stuff. So putting the soap in the dishwasher and pressing the start button is
oh,
ecstatic
that's like mind blowing. It's like
for an
whoa.
18-month-old.
Yeah.
For a 17-year-old who never had to do it, it's not so mind blowing.
Right. That may
So
not, that may not. That's probably a different approach. So so how do you approach situations where family member? Let's say the upcoming generation has a fundamentally different vision for the future.
yeah.
Right. So you've involved them. That you're educating them. They've been educated, but they're coming of age now. Maybe they're in their I don't know, let's say mid-20s, right? Where they're outside of school now and they have an opinion. What do you do when it's a fundamentally different view of the future versus the generation maybe still in charge, but once they hand it off, I had to imagine that somewhat happens fairly often. How do you navigate that?
It really depends on the sort of the senior generation, especially if it's the first generation, the wealth creating generation
Yeah.
is the parent. Like once you get through a few generations, families either fail or they learn how to have a little bit of flexibility
Oh,
between generations.
okay.
If you're talking about the wealth creating generations, parents and the kids, it really depends on how open are the parents to finding out what's important to the kid. Like if your child doesn't really they're not interested in the family business,
I
but they can prove that they have
I
skills.
just came across one a couple of weeks ago with a wealth owner and his kids, and yeah, the kids really just don't want to be part of it. Like they want the disbursements, but they don't really want to engage in the business.
Right. And that can be fine. But what are they doing to be productive? Do they have a passion? Do they want to pursue education and the family money can help them pursue their
Right.
education or do
Yeah, like
something productive or
philanthropy
even
they want to do.
philanthropy?
Like, are there other things they want to go after?
Right. But they have nothing. If they have no interest and they want the disbursements, that's where it gets tricky
Does it? Yeah, I would
and
imagine.
problematic.
Yeah, totally problematic at that point. How do you advise around that? Or give us an example of when you've come across that and how'd you navigate that?
Yeah, I'll give you a specific one. So, Guy started a company that you would probably, I'm sure you're familiar with it. Just didn't have high expectations for his kids. They got education, but they never did anything with it. The
Sure.
daughter's living in her 30s in a $10 million penthouse apartment in Miami. The
Mhm.
son is working in the business, but has no real expectations or accountability. And all the non-family executives just see him as a nuisance. The daughter in her $10 million penthouse gets a few million here, a few million there to keep trying different businesses. They all fail. And the
Right.
parents reach out to me asking, like you just did, what do you do? And I wrote a blog on this, which I'm happy to share if you want to share it with
Yeah.
this. It's called Falling on Your Sword. And what I basically say is if for this to get better, if there's any hope, and often there's not a lot of hope
Right.
when you're in your 30s and there's been no accountability and the money just keeps being thrown at you, it's hard. But what I've seen be successful is for the parents to take responsibility, have a sit down, often facilitated by me, so there's a referee, and the parents to say, we want to have a conversation. We have made a lot of money in our lives, and we feel like we've made decisions as we've dealt with that money and you that have not been in your best interest. And we think we've made some mistakes, and we want to tell you about some of the things we have done that we wouldn't do differently, but also some of our concerns about how this is going and your ability to be independent and accountable. And sometimes it can go okay. Sometimes the kids only hear, I can't live in the penthouse and you're not going to keep funding my business endeavors that go nowhere. And it's tough. It's tough. That's why I went
Yeah.
earlier and earlier in my work, proactive. And you
That's
can,
why I asked, because I feel like you get into your 20s and 30s, it's too late then. Like you got to
yeah,
teach young how to be more responsible, or what this means when this wealth gets to them, what it means.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, no, that makes sense. So when you're doing this, I imagine oftentimes you're going to have to work with other advisors too, right? Because
yeah.
inherently, any of these families have legal advisors, financial advisors, con- consulting advisors like me, right? So what makes that strong family advisor relationship in your view? What are the best traits of that? Some of the best practices there.
Yeah, great question. Humility of the advisors, right? When the
Okay.
advisors start puffing out their chests and I'm the important one, it's got to be about the family, the family's needs, and the advisors as a group to get to know each other, to respect that they each have different, areas of expertise, and to be able to humbly step back when another advisor might be, sort of more needed in the moment, and to be able to understand the different perspectives and expertise around all of it. But it gets tricky because just human nature and ego and all that. But the best experiences I've had situations where I'm brought in by like a financial advisor, for example, and
Right.
this one guy a few years ago had a really tough situation. He brought me in. He asked me if I was okay with him sitting in on the meetings. I said, I'd love to have you sit on as many as possible. He probably sat in on 95% of the meetings. And this was intense work going on several hours a week for probably 15 months. We became actually really good friends and got to know each other, but his expertise was needed. My expertise was needed. We really bounced off each other, supported each other, helped the family through a really tough time. And he had a level of glue in his relationship with them that I didn't have. And he lent his glue to me. And together we were able to help them confront some very tough things that needed to be confronted. And
It's a
it was
great
a
story.
great experience.
Yeah, because that's what you hope to be the case, that you, at least if you're the family, you hope you're bringing in advisors that truly care about them and are going to align like that. That he did have the best interest of the family by bringing you in and being so transparent and open, and
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm going to share here to help you because I know you've got a hard work ahead of you, Jeff. So I'm going to help you here because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, our goal is to help them.
Yeah. And another angle on this is not bashing attorneys, but the nature, the structural nature of their
Sure.
ethics, that they have one client. Well, families are a lot of people. It's a system of moving parts. And because attorneys ethically have to be really clear, my client is mom and
Is
dad, that
one. Yeah.
their advice is often skewed towards advocating
I never thought of that. So
strongly.
that can get really murky. How have you seen them get around that? How do you get around that problem?
Some, and these are attorneys that go to like some of the conferences that I go to, and they're into this world of family dynamics and stuff, and they're really progressive. And some of them will write up agreements where everyone in the family signs that you are not representing any particular person. You're representing us as a family. There's no privilege between
Right.
communicate. Actually have documents that lay out good boundaries so that they can be helpful to the
Oh,
family as a group. But that's still more on the rare side. It gets tricky. Some, trust and estate attorneys feel like I need to do what's best for mom and dad. I know what they secretly are trying to accomplish. And I'm sitting in a room listening to them give advice or education to the next generation that is skewed. It's not neutral. It's not simply information. It's something that skews toward what mom and dad like. And that's not a big deal for some folks. And again, not to bash attorneys, but for me, let's really either be open.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. You want to get to the root of this and like, hey, we have to talk about all those motivations. Otherwise, you're never really going to build a strong bridge there.
Right. And so that's a tricky part of the collaboration, between professionals.
I could see that. So what's your approach when it comes to like helping families develop, like, I guess what you show is a governance structure, right? And I'm sure you've seen ones that work and don't work, right? So why don't we play both sides of it? Tell me the ones you've seen that work really well. What are some of the best practices of a really good governance structure? And then what are those pitfalls you're like, hey guys, don't do this?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. I've seen, there's experts, professionals out there that do these governance 3-ring binders with hundreds of pages. It's very legalistic and contractual,
Right.
and it happens between the professional and the senior generation. And that tends to be something sitting on a shelf when I'm brought in that they barely even look at. I think the simplest form of governance that gets the trick done, you don't want to overly complicate it. The type of governance things that I do write up are not legal documents, but they're living documents that the family uses as
Right. Because a living that's more appropriate for this, I would think, right?
Yeah. So for me, like as a family gets beyond 15 or 20 people in the family involved in some way, or even those not involved, there's 15 family members who will be affected. As you get beyond that, I find it useful to have a family council. And this is a term that people use lots of different ways. For me, I mean, when I say family council, a representative group that does work between the family group and between the operating business, or between the family group and the family office and the boards that might be involved. It's a way of giving the family a representative voice because as you can imagine, 30, 40, 50 family members, 100 family members, you can't just call the family office executive
you can't
or
just
the
do that.
CEO. You need some kind of, and so you need the governance that says, this is how you become a member of the family council. This is how long your term is. This is how we develop the next generation to be able to serve on it. And you get, sort of alignment and agreement in the family of this is how we're going to do this thing. Those sorts of governance that give everybody a voice. And a voice does not, my families hear the sentence way too much. They're probably sick of it, but a voice does not equal a vote. You can give children and grandchildren.
They can have a voice at the table. It doesn't mean they actually have a deciding vote. And maybe is that a good way of kind of educating them, letting them participate, but they don't really have a say yet kind of thing?
Yes. And when they say reasonable things, whoever does have the vote hopefully takes that into account and they'll feel respected. If you give them a voice and never a vote, even when they have good ideas, you're going to lose them. Hopefully you give them a vote or you respect it with your vote so that they're capable of making their own vote when the time comes.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So are there some of the shifts you're seeing with families as they approach like legacy handoff? Like, is this what you're seeing differently that they're now, hey, let's bring them in early. Let them sit in the meetings.
Yeah.
Like, what are the shifts you're seeing versus when you started out here? What are you seeing more modern approaches to this?
Yeah, much more transparency, and transparency when the parents have been intentional about how they've raised the kids is beautiful. I recently had a situation where an 11-year-old was going to all these meetings with trust and estate attorneys and financial advisors and insurance planners and was sitting in with the dad and the mom, just sort of listening and asking questions, and all the numbers were there. The numbers weren't hidden. This kid saw everything and was really interested and asking great questions, but he was a mature kid raised by parents who were intentional. They made him clean up his room. They made him do well in school. They made him finish a sport, even if he didn't like it after 2 games, finish the season, then change sports. Like the simple things.
I do the same thing with my kids.
Right.
Like, no, you can't quit mid-season, bro. You signed up. We're going to finish this.
Right. That's it. And so that's the trend, is that I'm getting so much more proactive referrals where it used to be all like really rough kind of nightmarish situations. People are starting earlier. They're talking to kids more openly. And this is just in the culture in general, parents.
Yeah, no, that's good. You would hope that's what's happening now, because it feels like that's a more proactive and healthy way to do this. Particularly if you want that legacy to live on for several generations, you need to teach the next one the proper way to hand it off so they can teach the following and all, and so
Yeah.
on and so on and so on.
Right.
Yeah,
And
no,
develop a culture, a multi-generational culture of learning and development and respect and all of it.
I'm sure you've been at the other end of it though, where it's just screaming and yelling. So
Yeah. Oh, I've gotten between people who are ready to punch each other.
seriously,
Yeah.
oh,
So
that bad.
I used to play ice hockey, and it turns out that's a really good skill set for this kind of work. I don't
Yeah,
throw punches, but I can break it up like a
you
ref.
can break it up pretty easily. Yeah.
I'm not
Who knew
afraid
that
of
was going to help you?
I'm not afraid of punches being thrown and breaking it up. Yeah.
Uh, when you see that though, and this is kind of going a little deeper on that one, when you see that kind of dynamic, is there ever any way of repairing that or no? At that point, it's kind of done.
There are painful situations where there's not a lot of desire among family members to repair. And they're forced to work together because the way the assets are structured, the ownership, they have to make certain decisions together. And
Sure.
some of them can't, and they sue the crap out of each other until they can separate, even if it's costly.
Mm.
Some of them can do the basic, make decisions together and nothing else. Um, yeah, I've seen some real sad situations. And again, working class families, they would just go their own way, and there's nothing tying them together. The money can tie families together in a way when things aren't going well. It sort of forces them together when they'd rather be separate. Again, some do the minimum, some don't, and it falls apart in ugly ways.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those myself, a couple of clients we've gotten brought into, and and usually it was for transformation consulting that we want to transform the family offices. And we get into it, it's really more about transforming the relationships. And oftentimes it's, hey, okay, if you really can't repair it, well, we're going to break it apart then.
Yeah.
Don't break it apart and form multiple things, but you can find that distance. But I've seen a couple of those meetings where the shouting was pretty impressive, and you're like, okay, we're going to have to get creative on how we end this one.
Yeah. And, there are usually expenses of various sorts, from taxes to professionals that need to
Yeah,
be paid.
it's not a cheap solution. Yeah, it's not a cheap solution.
But sometimes it's worth it. The decisions I've seen people make to avoid those costs are often very painful. And sometimes you got to wonder, isn't it worth, biting the bullet, doing the painful thing? But then you have your own, not every family's meant to work together, right? There's not every family's meant to be together.
It's not a given, right? Just because you got this wealth and someone set it up doesn't mean it's always going to work that way.
Absolutely.
Well, to that point, and we'll start the positive end of this. How do you see the younger generation kind of shaping or reshaping these legacy conversations? So as these handoffs occur, whatever G, whatever to whatever G, doesn't matter. How are you seeing them in a positive way shape this differently now?
Yeah, I think culturally in kids who are under 25 right now, there's a real big interest and motivation to make social impact. And I am seeing younger generations, either buying into what was important to mom and dad or grandpa or great grandpa and grandma and running with it, or asking family permission to maybe take the foundation or just the family's giving in another direction that's more meaningful to them. And
We've been seeing a similar thing, a real big uptick in private foundations, private charitable trusts, like just being able to give back, do more, I guess, do good with the money, right? Do good.
Yeah. And getting their hands dirty, not just wanting to write checks, but also
you're not writing checks. Like a lot of them actually want to get in the weeds and help do stuff.
Yeah. And that's something I see that I think is really, really great. And some people are even a little like ashamed or embarrassed of the family money, especially if they can like direct it back to, our family made a ton of money over enslaved Africans, right? When they can make that kind of a line, or oil. And
that's tough. That's a tough one to deal with. Yeah.
And global warming, if they that's important to them, if they can connect those things, there's often a level of upset and identity and wanting to at least take the wealth and help the people who really either were involved in creating it without maybe even being paid, or to help repair the earth if the family's industry and wealth came from something that, had a negative impact.
Yeah, like if it was, I mean, make up example. Yeah, they're coal industry family, and they knew they're taking the land. Well, how do we give back? How do we help repair what we did?
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. So, all right. So, what are some of you talk about some of the advice you would give, but what are some other piece of advice you'd give maybe a G1 as they're beginning to think about succession? What would it be? Like, besides, hey, okay, you should have had them in earlier, but like, what else? What else would you tell them? Like, what else do you tell them to go after?
Well, I mean, if I can't say you should have had them in earlier, you just took my first response.
Like, let's say they didn't, or they did, but
that.
we don't know if it worked or not. It doesn't matter. But what else would you tell them to do?
Yeah, open up conversation about what's important to them. What do they like or find interesting about the family enterprise, whether they're still an operating business or even in a family office? There's a lot of complexity where someone might have an interest, and how can we help develop you so that you will be an appropriate hire for our business or our family office? And if you're interested in something else, how can we use the family wealth to support you to go off and do something different? I mean, to really, like any parent, find out where your kid's passion is. What do they want to do that's productive in the world that fits with your values, and then support them,
Support it.
even if it doesn't involve what the family's currently doing. Really
That's
being,
got to be hard because I'm sure as the controlling generation having to hand it up, they had a vision. That's great, but it may not be what the next person's vision is, and that's okay.
yeah.
It's all that there is a vision. That's what we're going for, right? If there's no vision, okay, like you said, there's bigger problems, but maybe that vision's okay, and you have to learn to accept that. I can see that being hard on the previous generation too.
Especially when, as you, I'm sure, see, there's a personality style that many entrepreneurs have, especially men. Maybe I'll get shot for this, but I think there's truth to it. And it makes a great entrepreneur and someone who can grow a business and work a zillion hours and handle a lot of things and stress. That is often, it's a very different skill set than generational wealth and developing children to maybe go in the business, maybe not. And so right there is a real challenge. That the personality of the entrepreneur is typically a different personality style and skill set of the family leader trying to develop subsequent generations in the context of family wealth. That's a real tricky one right there.
Yeah, I could see that. Oh man, yeah, I think you're doing God's work, Jeff. Like, there's more.
Thanks,
We need
man.
more of you out there doing this, and as more transformational wealth gets handed down over the next decade, 15 years or whatever, I'd imagine you're going to be pretty popular.
Thanks, man. I hope.
But okay, so as we're getting to the close here, let's start. What are some of the most exciting things in the space? What are you most excited about right now?
So, the stuff I'm doing around couples before young kids, and especially the stuff I'm doing around 1 to 4 year olds, is taking off, and people are really starting to get it. 7, 8 years ago, my proposals were laughed out of breakout session consideration because they thought I was taking a 2 year old.
What are you
talking
talking about?
money, right? What are you going to talk to? Like, they didn't get it. But now, and particularly, I've got a few videos of kids who are 2 years old or under. I have a 15-month-old boy, 1-5, right? A year and 3 months, doing amazing work at his family's business and really doing some cool stuff. And people are like, oh, I get it. Give them these real experiences that they can feel proud.
It goes back to your saying, like, have them turn the dishwasher on, like, teach them how to do so, because it's going to lead later in life to when you have to have more serious conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
so that's exciting, is that people are really starting to get it. And I think it's the simplest, the least time consuming, and the most powerful for any parent, even again, poor and working class, but especially when you have that safety net that can make life a little too easy when kids need challenge. That's something that excites me. People are getting that.
I love that. I love it. Well, thank you, Jeff, for joining me today. I love this stuff. I love hearing how you approach it. I think this is one of those areas of the industry we don't talk enough about, because it is this kind of undercurrent that if you're not mining this, you're going to mine itself, and that's probably not good. So on behalf of all the shows, thank you for all you're doing, because I'm sure they're very grateful for all that impact. But thank you for joining me here today, because I love hearing these stories. Every time we connect, it's another awesome story. So thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the invite. It's fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the second time now. You're a repeat guest, so maybe we'll go for a third. We'll get the trifecta.
Yeah, I did Chris, and now you. And is there somebody else I should talk to?
I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out for you, Jeff.
All right. Thanks,
man.
Thank
Thank you for joining me here today. Thank you. So everybody out there, thank you to Jeff Savlov for joining us here today. If you're curious, Blum and Savlov is his company. Please reach out to him. Jeff, we're going to have you on again. We got to keep the streak going.
Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you so much.